Kia ora tātou. 10 minutes, so I'll talk really quickly. And I've only got two real points that I want to make, and these are points that have come out of our discussion amongst traditional healers around the country. I'm going to focus particularly on Manuka, because that really is something that is a hot topic at the moment, and it actually brings together the points that we want to make. Firstly, Manuka honey wasn't a feature of traditional practice, and that is because before the coming of honeybees, there was no way of collecting the honey, but Manuka itself was a very important healing plant. Now, how do I work this thing? Okay. The key point I think that we need to keep in mind, the purpose of Manuka as a species is to heal the land. The honey and the oil that we get from Manuka is a bonus. It is a successional species. It's the first thing that comes on board after there's been a fire or a slip or some major catastrophe on the environment. And its job is to rehabilitate the land so that the land can get back to being what it should be. And as such, the Manuka species, and it may be one species or many species, the taxonomists will tell us in the end exactly what we've got, but it is a very, very variable species. It's adapted itself to the soils, the climates, the hydrology of the area, all those different variations we find in the New Zealand landscape. And you'll find that this is reflected a whole lot in the way that traditional healers use the plant. The question that we really want to ask is the introduction of the different cultivars which have been selected for their production of high-value honey or oil, is that affecting the ability of the plant to heal the land? In Māori terms, we talk about the mauri. Mauri is really the gift of life within a landscape. It's about the connection between species, the interdependence between species, their relationships to each other and to the life that's there. When you are actually introducing cultivars from a different area into a different landscape, are you affecting that mauri? We can't say yes or no, but we are concerned that in actual fact, it may be affecting the wellness of the land, the ability of the land to keep itself well. And to put it really quite plainly, there's a Māori saying, ka ora te whenua, ka ora te tangata. When the land is well, we will be well. If the land is unwell, then we are not going to be well. And we can see that with all the debate with regard to water in New Zealand at the moment, pollution and all those sorts of things. The number one importance is the wellness of the land. And a traditional Māori point of view, the earth is the mother, that comes first. Everything else comes underneath that. We must not let our economic development, for example, suppress the ability of the land to be well. And we're saying by introducing Manuka from other areas, by suppressing the natural succession of other species through the Manuka, are we actually affecting the wellness of the land? That's a question that we need to consider in terms of the sorts of planning that we need to do as an industry to ensure that in actual fact the long-term benefit is in actual fact a healthy living world. The next point, there's just some all sorts of things coming up. You'll find that most of the healing plants that we use for medicine are not deep in the bush, they're on the regenerating fringe of the bush. And there's a whole mix of species, and between them, they in actual fact rehabilitate the land. And we find those are the ones we use for healing, not the big species that you normally find, tōtara, kahikatea, taua, and things like that. Now, before honeybees were introduced into New Zealand, native plants had no difficulty in being pollinated. There are a whole range of pollinators. Birds we know about, tuis, bellbirds and things like that. Bats are really important for some species. Lizards are very, very important. Insects are very important, as we know. It's interesting up north, one of my colleagues was saying to me that when the varroa first hit parts of Northland and most of the honey hives disappeared, they saw a resurgence in the number of lizards in the bush and a resurgence of native bees. When the beehives came back, once the varroa was brought under control, those things disappeared. So the concern that we are having is, are honeybees displacing some of the native pollinators which are really important in terms of some species? You know, some species need a specialist pollinator. We have that issue in New Zealand with clovers and bumblebees and things like this. Some of our native species have specialist pollinators. If they are not there, they don't set seed. And so we are finding, from a botanical point of view, some species, once common, are not setting seed. They are slowly disappearing from the landscape. Is this the effect of the native pollinators being displaced by honeybees? Again, that's the question that we need to find more about. We need to keep in mind in terms of how we place things. You know, we moan about the effect of possums and ferrets and stoats and rats and all sorts of things on native species. Is the honeybee also another factor in the decline of New Zealand's biodiversity? That's the question that we have. And the question is, the more that we lose species, the more we affect the ability of that land to heal itself. The more that we affect that modi, that gift of life within a landscape. You know, the loss of a species means the breakdown of that modi. It means the breakdown of that web of connections which allows a landscape to be well. Despite all the efforts of all the scientists, of all the wonderful people working around the country to try and look after our biodiversity, we are still losing ground. New Zealand's biodiversity, as it is around the rest of the world, is continuing to decline. And so again, as beekeepers, the question is, are we contributing to that? Is that 3 minutes or 1 minute? Okay. This is, so some of the major issues in New Zealand, which every country of the world actually has to contend with: water quality, sedimentation, build-up of toxins, all those sorts of things. That's the field in which we actually have to think that when we develop something, it must be not at the cost of those things within our environment that the environment needs to, in actual fact, survive. So we're not sort of here as a traditional healer to sort of blame people, but what really the key message is that in terms of developing your industry, in terms of developing your business, in terms of the way that you plan to develop and place your hives, the species that you intend to introduce to enhance production, always keep in mind the big picture. What is best for the New Zealand environment? What are the key things that we need to sort of keep in mind to make sure that what we are doing is not actually contributing to the decline and the wellness of our landscape? We can blame dairy farmers for putting pollution into the water. We can blame people in cities for all the fuel that they burn and all the toxins that run into our harbours. We need to look at ourselves as an industry. Are we contributing to that? So thank you for the wonderful work that you're doing for New Zealand. But remember, the earth is the mother. We must care for that. That's much more important than economic development. Kia ora tātou.